and welcome to another exciting episode of What's the Point, the podcast that helps you find your meaning and fulfillment for work and daily life. And today I am truly heartwarmed and delighted to bring you Shirley Riley. Now, Shirley, I met from a conversation that catalyzed at the gym, actually. There was an introduction to the organization Change, Grow, Live, and then Shirley was introduced to me. But Shirley, I'd love you to give your side of the story and tell us all about you.
Thank you, and thank you for having me on this space, Dani, as well. And I just love the fact that you can meet people in such obscure and interesting places. There isn't anywhere that you can't meet somebody that's going to be helpful to you at some point in your life. So I'm Shirley. I have been a director in the charitable sector for the last 20 years. Starting my career as a volunteer, actually, in the education sector. And what can I say? Well, why did I get into the charitable sector is probably a really important thing for me, because it probably speaks to everything that I'm about and I believe in. I worked in the education sector when my daughter was really little. She's 25 in a couple of months, and I just saw young people struggling. And it was the first time that I'd kind of seen this with my own eyes, I suppose. And it felt like the system was failing them. We had young people that couldn't read, people with special needs, child protection, things like that. And I'd not seen those things before. And I didn't feel that I could do anything in that system. So I don't know if it was a connection that I had a young child and I felt that it was more important to me than it had ever been before. But as a result of that, that's what got me into the charitable sector. So I packed off my bags, got a job, and started teaching young people and adults in probation. And in no time at all, I was kind of having conversations going, well, this doesn't quite work. Why is that happening? How come the dad has also got issues and things like that? So before I knew it, the charitable sector had got me completely hooked, and I've been there ever since. Change, Grow, Live has probably been my longest employer. So I've been there since 2010, which is a really long time. And I think that speaks volumes for what they do and how they make a huge difference, which is important to me. But I've worked for a number of charities, and my biggest passion is people. So seeing people make a difference, whether they're staff and flourishing, and I absolutely love it when people do better than me and can take my job from me, if that makes sense. And just the fact that every single day there are people that that we can change their lives. It's really important to me, and that's why I'm here and what I do. So.
Shirley, and I feel your not just passion but heart for it and truth, as I said to you before we jumped on, your real truth in what you do. But do you want to let us know a little bit about what you're doing now at Bounce Back?
Yeah, so I've been with Bounce Back a year, so it's my anniversary now. Bounce Back is a charity in its own right, and it's a subsidiary of the parent company Change, Grow, Live. And we exist to help people change their lives for the better. So the chance for change, I suppose I'd say. And what that means is anybody that is at risk of offending or has a history of offending and or issues with drug or alcohol use, then we're there to help them. So we support them through education, training and employment initiatives. And we also run a social enterprise as well that does things like painting and decorating, refurbishments and things like that. So quite a broad spectrum, but ultimately our aim is around diversion from crime, making a huge difference and giving people the chances to succeed and make better their lives, but jobs with prospects and things like that. So that's what we're all about.
And am I right, Shirley, that your reoffending rate against the national average of 50% is something like 10 or 12, is it, through Bounce Back programme?
Yeah, so our stats for 2021, which are our latest year that we've done as a whole, illustrate 10% of people would reoffend, which clearly is more than we'd like, but it's significantly lower than the national average. And I think the reason we have stats like that is because we provide end-to-end And what that means is, I would say when somebody gets a job, for example, that's not when the problem stops. That's not when it gets easier for somebody. Actually, that's probably when lots of other things start to take place, where if you've never had a job for the first time, if you're not used to good timekeeping and what that means, if you struggle with difficult conversations and you're in new environments and things like that. So we work with people for 3 to 6 months after employment, and I think stats that go with that are probably about 74% of people are still in work after 6 months as well, which is fantastic. So yeah, I feel that we make a really great difference. It's quite rewarding.
Gosh, Shirley, with figures like that, you know, reoffending national average 50%, under your leadership 10%. Golly geez, what else could you do under your leadership? Goodness me, that's absolutely sensational. But more than that, it's impactful. You know, you are truly significantly changing lives. Anything else you want to say before we get straight in?
I think I'll allude to it throughout, but it isn't one person that achieves it. I think it's not just the individual themselves who are absolutely critical and key in giving them their future opportunities, but we work with so many different organisations, so it really is around collaboration to be able to achieve it. I think I once described it as if you were building a house, because we're in construction, if you take shortcuts in the beginning, the likelihood is something will go wrong with that house. It won't last and it'll cost you an absolute fortune to fix. And I think I liken the work that we do in the same way. So if you haven't got all those different wraparound partners there that need to be there, and you take shortcuts, then the likelihood is somebody will reoffend. So what we try and do is bring those partners together as much as possible, and give everybody the best chance of success that they can have.
And you're doing it. You're all doing it.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Well, I don't like to mess around. I like to get straight into the heartbeat of matters. So, Shirley, let's start with, what is the point of your life?
What can I say? I think I think the point of my life has probably been the same my entire life, whether I've been my 15-year-old self or whether I'm my 50-year-old self. And it's about being around people and seeing the best of people. I think one of the things that's always struck me is injustices. And you know, whether I've been that 15-year-old person at school seeing somebody being bullied in the playground, or you know, I'm kind of still seeing things as an adult of the people that are coming and accessing our services. I don't think we all have the same start in life, and we don't have the same opportunities. And granted, people make mistakes. You know, I work within the criminal justice, but it doesn't mean that we can't give people second chances. So I think my point in life is getting the best out of people, whether the people that access our services, people I bump into via somebody that I met at the gym, you know, people in the street. Yeah, it's basically making a difference, whatever that is, however that is, and I think that's my purpose.
And Shirley, I just want to unpack that, if you don't mind, a little bit, in that seeing the best in people, working in the world space that you do. How do you keep going in that when people let you down?
If I'm honest, I don't see it as people letting me down. And I think what I mean by that is we don't know what's going on for anybody at the point where what it is that either I or another organisation or an individual helping somebody needs. So I think the picture is always bigger than that. And I think being able to connect and understand their why and what's going on behind it, and just dealing with I suppose what you've got available to you at that time is important. And I also think there's never just one route for anything. You know, we have a bag of tricks. So, you know, life throws things at us, and it has thrown things at me over the time. It's thrown things at everybody. But yeah, I don't think that is the issue, that people are let down. I just think maybe they're not the right person at that time to help that situation for that person or that piece of work.
What an inspiring answer. What a truly thought-provoking answer. And then in now in 2024, post-pandemic, post Brexit-ish,
Yeah.
post a few things, big things that have happened. But what trends are you seeing within people at the moment, Shirley?
Do you know that's a really, really good question, and I think we've got the atrocities of the war, we've got Brexit, we've got the cost of living, we've got the COVID, and that has changed people quite a significant way. I think it's changed. I feel in most cases it's made people more empathetic and more understanding, because I think no matter who you are, one of those things has affected you in one way or another. So I think definitely within the sector that I work in, the charitable sector, and within the criminal justice or the alcohol and substance misuse, somebody knows somebody, whether they're a family member or a friend. They're more connected than we realise to people that need help. I mean, I recall I was coming back from London on the train to Edinburgh a few months ago, and you'll start a conversation in the same way that you did in the gym. I'll start a conversation with whoever sat there, and as soon as you say what you do, they'll tell you about somebody that they know from that. And so I think that has meant that because people are more aware and more interested, it's removing stigmas, and it's allowing people, whatever is happening for them, to be more vulnerable. Get my words out there. So I think within our world, to be vulnerable and be able to talk about what's happening for them, I think that's great. But in any part of life, I think what's also really interesting is in the workplace. So I would say now more than ever, people are choosing their employers based on values. So before, it might have been what the salary is and things like that. I think that's still important because cost of living has really, really affected people. But they choose where they want to work based on the ability to be the whole selves, to bring the differences and the diversity to work. It's really common that in interviews, people will ask us about our values as an organisation and ask us to bring those to life. And what we notice is if they've got a place where they can be celebrated, nurtured, or utilised, which is something that I truly believe in, with a bit of fun and laughter, then that's how and why people are choosing their employers. Do you want me to go on? I've got.
Yeah, I love this.
I think from a leadership point of view, having been in senior management for the last 20 or so years, we put a lot of responsibility on our shoulders, and I think in the past it was pretty much that you might not kind of sleep. Everything was a priority. Your list never went down, that kind of thing. I think that's changed as well. I think the notion of leaders coming together across sectors is more prevalent than I've ever seen before. Sharing best practice and the idea of organisations sharing their secret weapons, so to speak, is quite unbelievable. But I think there's a common goal that actually if the customer is wanting the best service and they're wanting the best people to do it, then what I'm seeing with leaders and organisations is how can we come together so that collectively we can do our part of it rather than be everything to everybody. So that's really good. And I think as a result of that, leaders are having more spaces where they've got somebody to talk to, which means that they're not as isolated and they can be their authentic selves in those spaces. So that I think is a really, really good step forwards. The workplace is changing in most settings from what I speak to people. Again, I think my experiences are that people are interested and want to know more and want to do more. So within the corporate world, which is a world that it's a long time since I've actually worked in that, way before I joined the voluntary sector, what we're also finding is people that have got jobs that can't connect in that way are looking for a way to give back. And I think COVID, and the NHS and being able to do more and lots of different ways that people could volunteer has really started a wave in people that they want to have more meaningful lives within the work setting that can then balance their personal lives. So yeah, lots of things there that I think have changed that we're noticing.
Wow, there is so much there that you've noticed, and just to bring it back down to Gallup's research, they are saying that we are looking for more meaning at work nowadays than previously, as you've said. And Shirley, with this amazing leadership, and it's not about beating the national average, of course not. It's about doing the right thing, of course.
Yeah.
That's leadership, but you are a strong and successful leader. But within yourself, to be that, what good habits do you have for yourself?
They're probably more recent than I'd like to say, so I can't say I've had those habits for the last 20 or so years. But I think a good habit I have is to work on myself within the leadership space and to take feedback. I think that's really, really important. Above anything, I think a work-life balance. So, there's always going to be something that needs doing. It's never going to end. And it's easy to turn everything into a priority. So just the ability to slow things down, take a step back, and allow other people to do the same thing. And then, work through what they are. So I think since I've taken and adopted that approach, generally speaking, the path that I take with others is not the one that I probably would have taken the first time. And I think there's much more collaboration. There's no single point of failure in that anymore. That weight on your shoulders is shared because actually everybody has a part to play in that one. So I try and adopt that as a leadership style. Granted, there are times where you've really got to step in, but they should be very few and far between. So I think that means, from a work-life balance, practicing what you preach, which is important to me. So gone are the days of working evenings and weekends. There might be the odd one, but it's just not healthy. And we need time to stop, to rest, recuperate, and spend time with those that we care about. It's about getting that balance between work and life, and that is really important to me. And if I speak to my colleagues, my staff, which I do, I try and get to know them all, although we've got 100 now, so it's getting much harder. But if I can have conversations with them, it's generally to get to know them as a whole person and know what makes them tick and what they like to do in their own time, so that you can make sure that as an organisation, you're able to enable ways and flexibility for those things to be accommodated. So I try and kind of bring in habits that will mean, I think if I go back to September, one of the things I remember as being a mum when my daughter was younger is when they start a new school, absolute nightmare. You're trying to juggle work and you're trying to get your child to school, and it might not go well, and they might be ill for the first few days, that kind of thing. So I shared with my team in September, you might have one child, you might have several children. Speak to your line managers, tell them what you need, but make sure that they have the best day possible, and things like that. So there's things that I think are really, really important, and I think if you work with your teams to get the best out of them and help them have that work-life balance, then actually efficiency, effectiveness, and everything else, people thrive, and that's where the fun, the laughter, and you become a community rather than a set of individuals on a job description. So I think there's things like that. Working online sounds great, and I'm sure some people love it. But I make sure that I've got a balance between physical meetings and online. And I don't do an hour's meeting, so it might sound really simple, but I'll do 50 minutes because that gives that 10 minutes back, so that everybody gets the chance to kind of refresh, go and get a brew, that kind of thing. So it's the simple little things that I think can be habits that anybody can adopt. And personally, my biggest habit is self-care, family and friends upmost, which are really important to me. But the outdoors, I'm quite active. I have a lot of energy, and I need to find ways to release that. But the danger is I could be working every hour God sends, and instead of that, I find a balance to be up hiking or paddleboarding and things like that. So don't tend to do small things. So this weekend, I'm planning to do the Yorkshire Three Peaks, which I've done several times. So that'll be a 26-miler in a day, and I've got the Atlas Mountains at the end of the month and things like that. So I do try and give them where there's a challenge attached to them. But that's what keeps me energized and good habits. So it keeps my mind busy as well as my mental agility.
Wow, so much them. And I you know, it's great to hear about, you know, your switch off is a different type of activity, but it's a recalibration activity, if that makes sense. And it often is the case with high performers, high achievers, that they can't sit still, but yet that not sitting still is channeled in a different direction, whether it's the garden, making the garden, a walk with the dog, or I know you do that, but three peaks as well. That's wonderful. And it also in your leadership, what I really liked hearing you say is about feedback, Shirley. Because funny enough, I spoke to a leader earlier, and they just had an exit interview, which in their words was brutal. The feedback that was coming, but this leader said it's really important. It's so important to get the raw real, so we can work with it.
Yeah, and I mean, for the last 4 years prior to joining Bounce Back, I was in a role, a national role with Change Grow Live on cultural transformation, and that was working with all the leaders across the organisation, so about 1,000 leaders, on doing things the right way, how to have the wicked conversations, for example, and treating people with dignity and respect, and where values and things fit in. And one of the things that was really important throughout that was around just cultures and making sure that people have a voice and that voice is heard, and that things change, because organisations will try and do their best endeavours. I do believe that's the case. I'm a total glass half full, but I think in most cases the intention is right, but things go wrong, and actually if people don't have the opportunity to speak up, then you don't get to do anything about it. So the one thing I love about feedback is it can bring change, and generally speaking, all feedback has a place to be able to bring about good change. So yeah, I wouldn't have it any different, whether that's for me personally, which I encourage people to give, or to give to each other, and then helping people how to be able to give that feedback between each other, which is quite daunting, I think, for some. But I think one of my phrases is, what's the worst that can happen? You know, you start to look at all different sides of, you know, being able to kind of give feedback, and actually it's probably more scary thinking about it than it is dealing with the consequences of it, and looking for the good that can come out of it.
Yes, brilliant. And I don't know where I've got it from, but I love the phrase. I think I might have made it up, but I love it. Where there's challenge, there's change. When there's feedback, like you're saying, that challenges us, and we can change from there. That's where we can move forward from.
Absolutely, and there's nobody that's perfect, and if we think we are, then we're already kind of on a hide to nothing, I think my mum would say back in the day. But I think if we can, that's where I think I suppose the change in the movement towards showing our vulnerabilities and saying, you know, this is how it's affected me, this is how I feel, this is my experience. I haven't done this before, or I've been doing this for the last 20 years, and maybe there's a new way of doing it. All those things. It doesn't matter where you are in your employment career, or your, you know, your leadership journey. Every day is a school day. You know, I'm kind of borrowed that from one of my colleagues, but it's absolutely true. And those are probably the moments that give me those small right smiles, or those light bulb moments. So you know, those little nuggets of, why didn't I think of that myself? Or That's fantastic. Let's do something with it. They're just magic, and yeah, that's what keeps me going. That's why I do what I do.
Oh, marvelous. And then looking at the other end of the spectrum, rather than those light bulbs or nuggets, when you're near burnout, and we all sometimes feel that, Shirley, how do you avoid it? How do you avoid negative experiences like burnout?
I think sometimes it's not always possible. Sometimes you can feel it coming, and other times you can't. I like to think I have learned to sort of spot the signs in myself, and being quite energetic, then that means it's probably harder to spot, if that makes sense. So I just, but I think the thing I've learned, and the thing I do more of than I've ever done before, is to basically kind of speak up and say, right, I can't do this anymore. Something's got to give, and bring other people into it. And what I generally find is they'll say, oh, Shirley, we could have helped you ages ago, or that's absolutely fine, I'll pick that up. So the kind of traits that I have with the leaders that I support, saying, right, okay, where can we help? What's the other way of doing this? Looking for solutions. I think there's something about taking a step back and looking into myself to do that. That can be within my own organisation and the people I lead. It can be with peers, but it can also be external. And it doesn't always have to be people that are professional in the same kind of sector or at the same level. It can be friends, neighbours, because actually those that are, I suppose, further away from what you do on a daily basis will probably ask the questions that are so blindingly obvious because they don't understand that they're more likely to help you to get to where you need to be on occasion. So it's just having the confidence to speak up and say, I can't do this right now. And I've done that. I've done that in the past, and I will continue to do that. But that is a new skill that I've learned, I'll be honest. Yeah.
Great you've learnt it, because I was actually speaking to another leader a couple of weeks ago about empowering the team in confidence to say that for themselves, because when we're quite young in our career, we don't want to seem incapable.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that stood out during COVID in the work that I was doing there, so Change Go Live's a national organisation. It supports people with a range of issues, but in particular drug and alcohol needs, both in prison and community. Some of those people medicated, so there's a risk element to somebody not getting the support that they need, which then puts people in a position of pressure. At the same time as you've got people trying to manage their home lives and what's happening for their partners at work, and everything else, juggling this world that we were all going through at the same time. So I think within Change Go Live, one of the mottos that we had, but we made sure that we really, really kind of worked on this, was to do what you can and do what mattered. So instead of trying to do everything, let's really get to the bare bones of what needs to be done on a daily basis that's going to make a difference. Everything else can wait. And it was almost a movement, if I'm honest. You could feel a sense of relief from people, a sense of belief that an organisation was allowing that and allowing you the autonomy and to be able to kind of have everything happen, children in the background, or said today I can't do, and people working together to find solutions. And I know in Bounce Back from joining those, because I've had those conversations about what mattered to them, and they were running services in prisons, and that was almost impossible because in the prisons, prison staff were reduced, which meant that the regimes changed, which meant that the ability both to be able to get in and to deliver services safely meant a whole rethink of everything that they did. So I know that Bounce Back went through the exact same journey as Change Go Live, and there were at least 50 organisations that I consulted with over that time that were having different stories. And I think if I go back to my original points, I think that's where I kind of say there's a change, there's empathy, there's understanding, and a lot of that comes from those experiences that came out of COVID and are still working their way through now.
And you definitely exude that, Shirley. I mean, didn't I email you the other day saying your empathy is endearing? You know, you definitely promote that and exude it. And then looking bigger and brighter, and if we take a step back to the bigger picture, what would you say success is to you, Shirley? What does success look like?
I'm not going to go for the typical things around kind of performance, contract size, growth, and things like that. I think they're all a requirement of the job and the work that I'm in and the expectations. But I think there's probably two really simple ones. Listening to the stories of people's lives who have changed. And I hear those on a daily basis, but when I get to meet those people as well, and how they can kind of express the difference and what their hope and their opportunity for and things like that. It just, yeah, they're mind blowing for me. And you know, I spent a whole career having that luxury. That's never going to go away. And I think the other side is staff flourishing. So I think in order to help change people's lives or support them to change their lives because they're in control of that, you have to create the best conditions for your staff as well and allow them to flourish. And I think what excites me at the moment is that particularly the younger generation and the use of AI and the digital technology and some of those things I have no idea or I haven't got a clue. They're absolutely are outstanding. I think being able to see what things may change in the future and things like that is quite an exciting space to be in. And I think success probably looks to me for both of those groups, whether you're somebody that accesses services because you need help at some point, or whether you're somebody that's supporting, just seeing those flourish and thrive. They're the two things. It's all about people, passion for people.
It truly is. It truly is. And in all my years of doing this, Shirley, and it's a question in my book, what's the point, is about what does success look like and define that. And all my time doing this, no one has ever responded with the answer, listening to the stories of people.
I'm surprised. I'm surprised because I think if I mean, I used to kind of run workshops on listening and the idea of being able to, simple thing, just close your eyes and actually listen to the entire feedback that somebody's given to you, and then listen again and listen again, and look for your moments where you've got connections and ask questions, but ask questions for them, not for you. It's a really difficult skill is to listen, but in every story there's probably something that will connect you, and yeah, it's meaningful for them, so it's got to be meaningful for it is for me anyway. Yeah.
Stunning. And then moving forward, when we looked at when you get let down in living the point of your life, but when life truly exacerbates you, when you are de-energized, when things are going wrong both at home and indeed at work for you, Shirley, what is it that keeps you going?
It's the fair chances piece. So I think the thing that exacerbates me, because I have a high tolerance to, I'm pretty resilient from that point of view. I try not to personalize things because it's not usually about me. It's about the situation that people are in and things like that. Some of it might be different. But what exacerbates me more than anything is people being judged for whatever that is. And I know, we've got protected characteristics, but the idea of even needing protected characteristics is something that's great to have, but it shouldn't be necessary. In my view, we should all be able to be our best selves, and the diversity and the differences should be celebrated and included. So it exacerbates me when people do not get to be all of those things in whatever setting that they're in. And it must be, I think, as a woman in the workplace, as a Northern woman, as a strong woman, as a woman leader, I've had a whole career that that's been kind of pushed against me, which has probably made me resilient. And I think probably up till the last 5 or 10 years ago, I just accepted that was okay. And I think in the last 5 or 10 years, I was like, well, no, it isn't. So defending others and supporting others has moved to more rather than defending, giving people a voice, and giving them the ability to step up and things like that. So my exacerbation, the bit that keeps me going, is empowerment of people in whatever it is, so that they can make their own choices, and take control. So yeah, that's kind of my thing, really.
Awesome. And it feels to me, if you don't mind me saying, that it's an enormous sense of justice as well. What's fair and right.
Yeah, and I think probably some of that stems from, you know, I mean, I remember a really loving family and stuff like that as a, you know, growing up in the 70s and things like that. But we didn't have anything, you know. I think the first house was a council house. There's nothing wrong with council houses, but that was my kind of start. But I do remember in my youth, definitely never feeling good enough or anything like that. So while I knew I had abilities and people were recognizing those, I didn't necessarily want to recognize them in myself. You know, so it probably created a persona on the outside to make myself look stronger than on the inside. So I think that's probably stayed with me my entire life, but also probably helped me recognize and see in others where they're putting different shields up, or where it's, you know, blatantly obvious that they're being treated differently and things like that. So and I just love with a passion the difference in people, whatever it is. You know, I love to explore it and find out, and you know, because I think people are interesting, and there's no two people that have got the same story, but collectively we're just, you know, we can do really great stuff together, whether that's kind of, you know, living our everyday lives or working together. So yeah, so my exacerbation is almost the flip side of it, is the thing that drives me.
Wonderful. And then bring it into you, Shirley, you and your values. What 3 would you say that you live by?
Yeah, I think one that's probably never changed, and they've probably not changed a lot for me anyway, except I've grown into them, I suppose, over the years. Authenticity, hope, and diversity.
And authenticity, hope, and diversity. And how do those, would you say, keep you focused on fully living the point of your life in terms of seeing the best in people?
I think it's for me, it's important to be my authentic self and help other people be. So I think that kind of keeps me focused, and it's almost like a point that I can keep going back to and questioning myself on. If for any reason I kind of, I suppose, go off on a tangent to something like that, it's like, what's important to me, and what's important to me is to be myself. I think from the hope point of view, I am an optimist. I'm absolutely glass half full. And I also think that without hope, there's no purpose. And I kind of, yes, it's good to recognize the past, but actually the past is only part of anybody's journey, and actually the present and the future is, you know, what we should be working on. So that's, I'm always using the past to question the future, and the future's not been decided. So I like that almost gives me enough ambiguity. I can't even say that word. But again, I just kind of find that gives the space to think. And I think that the diversity, going back to a few of the points that I've made, I just think it's a thing of beauty. I think everybody has got different abilities, gifts, and you know, I just going to probably spend the rest of my life figuring those out for myself and for others. So yeah, probably sounds a bit fluffy and philosophical, that, but yeah, those are why and how I operate.
Nothing fluffy or philosophical. Well, a little bit philosophical, but nothing fluffy. Certainly, Shirley, serious, because there's a book here, Strengths-Based Leadership, and actually Gallup researched 10,000 people about what the best leaders exuded, you know, what they describe as the best leaders. And so essentially, what do followers need? What do, you know, your team and all the people around you need from you leading them? And what do we need from what do we need, sorry, from anyone that leads us? And that's 4 things. And I'll just share with you, and you've said one, and it's what you value: trust, stability, compassion, and hope.
Yeah.
4 needs of followers: trust, stability, compassion, and hope.
Absolutely. And I think when I was in Change Grow Live, we did a piece of work with the whole organisation, asking what was important to them, and in order to build our values around it. And they came out with trust, connection, collaboration, and whole self. So very, very similar. And from their point of view, that allowed them to flourish in the workplace. So if those conditions were there, they flourish, and if they're not, things go wrong.
Shirley, honestly, your leadership is both impressive and impactful. You know, we can hear that from the data, but we can also, well, I certainly can feel it from how you lead, and the focus and heart that you lead with. But before we bring today into land, your first podcast, I can't believe you've never done a podcast before. Amazing. You know, you are a natural, you need to do more. And thank you for making mine your first ever. But before we bring today into land, is there anything else you'd like to offer, say, or position?
I think every day is a school day, definitely. I've been a leader for, above 20 years. And in those times, there's been things that I've done wrong and I would do differently if I went back to them. There's been things that haven't been perfect. I think in my early days, I was probably that perfectionist that worked way too many hours and, had a solution for everything. I don't think that was the best version of me as a leader. I think it's much more important to provide assurances to bring people on board and to make sure that everybody's got a part to play. So, leadership styles aren't they're not stagnant. There's something that really needs to be worked on, and I know I'm going to keep working on mine. But if I was going to give anybody any words of advice, no matter whether you've been in leadership for 20 years or 2 years, is just keep working on yourself. And you'll enjoy it if you do. It's a fantastic place to be, but share it with others. You don't need to be alone.
Shirley, wonderful. Thank you so much for your wisdom, your honesty, the hope that you've offered, and the massive difference that you make to so many lives around you, mine included. Thank you.
Thank you, Dani. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you so very much. I've loved this episode, Shirley. Thank you. It's been tremendous with you and really, truly uplifting. So thank you. That brings us into land on another episode of What's the Point? If you have been touched by any of the issues within this podcast, please make contact with me, or indeed Shirley. I'll tag her in, and do share this with your friends and community. Thank you so much for joining another episode of What's the Point, and a huge thank you to you, Shirley Riley.
Bye.